Hey guys, Cyphus here. I just wanted to give you a quick update before I gave you a rerun. Obviously, with Roland's departure, things are going to be changing here at DotP. I don't know what all those changes entail just yet, but you guys are going to be the first to know. We still have a Patreon episode that was released today. If you're a patron, so you can go check that out. It's brand new content. Me and Ursi kind of shooting the shit. We talk about VR, all sorts of stuff. Game of Thrones a little bit. For those of you that are, be warned, there's some spoilers towards the tail end of the episode if you haven't watched it or caught up. But I did want to just take a second to address that all the folks who have been hitting me up as, the big news kind of dropped late last week that Roland is going to be leaving. I know for some of you that have been with us for a long time, this is going to be a strange transition, but we're going to do our best to continue on. But have no fear. Everybody else here at DotP, you're going to be getting more content from. Definitely going to get more content from Mercy and Proud. I am certain you're going to get more content from Breaky. The rest of this week is going to look just like it always has. We're going to have a Teach Me Tuesday, Theorycraft Thursday, and a Dot Pro show on Friday, and hopefully some exciting guests. Like last week, we had PPD. If you haven't checked that one out yet. But yeah, I just wanted to take that brief moment to thank you all for hitting me up. You guys are great. Some really awesome words of encouragement from all of you to continue doing what we're doing. I wish I had definitive news about what like the Monday show is going to look like or what changes were going to be made around here at .p moving forward. Unfortunately, I don't have those yet. But as soon as I have all of that kind of hammered out, and I am working with everyone here behind the scenes to figure out what the path forward looks like, you guys will be the next to know. I swear. So thanks for sticking with us. I hope that you enjoyed this rerun. Today is a one-on-one I recorded with TrentPax back in May of 2017. He'd been on the show once before, ages ago, before he ever got any traction in the scene. He was hanging out at .p doing Ask a Deviant stats with us, and he was a delight then, and he's even more of a delight now. We're glad to see Trent doing what he's doing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I'm basically introducing TrentPax right now. So that's weird. Hope you enjoy it. Good luck. Godspeed, guys.
Hey guys, today's .p one-on-one features TrentPax from Moonduck TV. He is a panelist, a caster. He's a jack of all trades, and this interview is brought to you today by Pugna, PVGNA. Pugna is a website that offers the best video guides on heroes, champions, items, skills, builds, strategies. They do Dota 2, League of Legends, Overwatch, Counter-Strike, and they try to bring in the very best talent they can to help you dominate your games and learn from those incredibly talented people. For Dota, some of their top creators include Wagamama, Chessie, Slasher, Jenkins. They offer their service right now for only $4.99 per month. You can cancel online anytime. More than 700 guides, analysis, hundreds of hours of videos. You can connect with Steam to actually get recommendations, and you can watch it on the web, on your Android, iOS, Apple TV apps, basically everywhere. You can be learning Dota on your iPhone like me at work by watching some of these really incredible guys. They have paths. Basically, they offer these awesome courses that have paths like how to raise your MMR, or how to become a better support, or how to carry your team, how to win in Dota 7.05. All of these things are available through Pugna.com for $4.99 per month. But right now, if you go to defenseofthepatients.com and click the Pugna emblem all the way on the right-hand side there under our social links at the top of defenseofthepatients.com, you can be redirected to Pugna to start a free trial. So you can try this right now for free by going to defenseofthepatients.com and clicking on the Pugna shield, PVGNA, and tell them .p sent you. And you can get that free trial started and see what the content's like. So, like I mentioned, today is TrentPax. He has been on the show before. He was one of our very first guests here on Defense of the Patients. At the time, he was going by MottPax. He was working with Standard Deviants. He and I get into that a little bit, and it was a blast talking with him. I was instantly transported back to the first like month or two of the podcast, and it was fun. It was fun just kind of being in that reminiscing place, and it was also a blast to hear about where he's gone, what he's developed, and how he's kind of segued into this awesome esports career and working with the great people over at Moonduck. He did really a fascinating stint that I did not know about before prepping for this interview, where he was actually developing stats for Complexity Gaming. And it was during one of their stronger runs. He's had a great career. He's faced his own trials and tribulations. He's got an incredibly interesting background. He's a very smart, very bright guy, and we were very lucky to have him here on the show. I really think you're going to enjoy this interview, so I'm going to let you get right to it. Hope you enjoy. You are listening to a DotP one-on-one. Pyrian Flax, welcome to the show, sir.
Hello.
That is Casey Atchison. Welcome to the show, Casey.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Welcome, Sunsfan.
Hello, friends. It's been a long time.
Mott, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me once again. Very excited to be here.
Austin, Capitalist Walsh. Welcome to the show, Cap.
Thank you very much, man. It's good to be back.
Special guest, Sir Action Slacks. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Hey everybody, welcome to another DotP one-on-one. Today's guest is somebody who's on the show. You had to be one of our first 10 guests for sure.
I think I was.
Maybe in the first 5. And that voice you were hearing is TrentPax. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, that was quite a long time ago. Both of us just mere fledglings in the Dota world.
Yeah, that's right. We were, I think we were talking before the show. It had to have been September or October of 2014, I want to say.
Yeah, I think that's right, because I was, I think I remember I was actually living in an apartment that my wife and I had got, but she wasn't moving in until after we were married. So I was there for 1 month before we'd gotten married, just as kind of why not? So I was there alone. I remember doing the interview.
Yeah, I remember you telling us about that, actually, now that you bring it up. At the time, you were going by MottPax.
That's true. Yes.
And so I got to know, obviously you had to change your name because of Mott.
Yep.
Is it because he was better at thumb wrestling? Or
pretty much, yeah. Just he got me, the Mott. No, actually, it was really good, because one of the funniest things was the first time I actually started going to actual events. I think the first LAN, if I'm not wrong here, I believe the first LAN I actually attended was TI. So that's pretty exciting. Just obviously as a spectator, we did a bunch of Moonduck stuff when I was there and whatnot. But it was kind of weird when people were referring to me as MottPax in real life. When it was people who knew my name. When they don't know my name, that's totally understandable. That's your thing. But when it's fellow people I work with at Moonduck and stuff calling me MottPax in person, I was like, you can just call me Trent. I don't know. It just something there was just so when this came up with Mott, and there legitimately was so much confusion. I was pretty happy to just make the switch, honestly. At first, I was a little hesitant, though, because I had been MottPax since, I don't even know. I was, grade 9 or something, I want to say.
Oh, wow.
So a long time ago.
And hard to give up those screen names.
I know. It was, I had it on everything, too, but that's okay. TrentPax works for me.
Yeah. So we'll get into your Dota background here in a second, but I want to know where you grew up first. I want to know where a young TrentPax was growing up.
The young lad himself. I grew up in the middle of the woods in Nova Scotia. In a place called Mount Tom. And the only thing that people know about Mount Tom is that whenever you drive past on the highway, there's snow. That's pretty much it. Lots and lots of snow. It starts sometime in November, and it doesn't stop snowing until I don't know, May. It's something else. So it was a lot of an outdoorsy life, but the sun does go down. So out there, we didn't have internet. We had dial-up until I left for university. So a lot of my days were spent just outside for the day, and then when nighttime came, it would be single-player Nintendo games kind of deal. I didn't even start PC gaming until I went to university, really.
Wow. So, I mean, do you look back fondly on growing up in kind of that remote kind of an area, or do you feel like you missed out on something as a kid?
I definitely skirted the line a little. I would, because I played a lot of sports. I played a lot of basketball and stuff, and so I had tons of practices in the town. So rather than my parents obviously not wanting to drive half an hour both ways into the city on the highway, I would just say, hey, why don't I just stay, I can stay at, Jay's place, or, I can stay at Graham's house instead. She'll just let me crash there for the night with my grandma. And so I would kind of hang out in town a lot, so I still got to hang out with a lot of my friends. And the second I was 16, I got a motorcycle, and I spent most of my time in town. It was definitely, like, my brother was much more about, like, he got into the PC gaming early and kind of developed those online friendships, but I wasn't like that at all. I just wanted to be in town, hang out with people, and, like, play sports.
So where are you living now? Where are you currently located?
I went down. So basically, Nova Scotia is a pretty small province in Canada. It'd be one of the smaller ones. Overall, our population is about 1 million. And there's essentially two centralized cities in the whole province, with one being quite a bit larger than the other. And that big city is Halifax. And it's a big university town. We've got 5 universities, I think, on a peninsula, and the rough population around it is like 300,000 people. So it's just full of students. The entire, province just flocks there, and that's how I wound up here as well. So ended up meeting my wife and settled down in dear old Halifax for good.
And I mean, does that feel like home at this point, or do you still, or do you still think of your childhood home as home?
No, definitely. Here definitely feels quite a bit like home. I liked a lot of the experiences outdoors and stuff. Back home, like, I can still picture all of the nooks and crannies of various logs and trees and waterfalls and stuff that I would dirt bike to, and all those kind of fun things. But in terms of, like, the actual physical house and stuff, and that location, it just, like, doesn't do anything for me like, at all.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. So you went to university, you mentioned. What did you go to university for?
I went setting out on a geography degree, and I ended up finishing it. Yeah, I ended up getting my bachelor's in geography. I did it as a, basically you can do it in like a science background or an arts background. So science, you tend to do obviously other science courses. So you do like chemistry and bio and stuff. And then you go into that like geomorphology kind of deal, fluvial systems, some volcanoes, all that fun stuff. But I did the artsy side with all the political science, sociology, and human geography. So it's like studying cultures and things like that, which I found very fascinating.
Do you find that degree and that kind of a background has been helpful in Dota is obviously very international.
Yeah.
NA is arguably the smallest scene of the major scenes. Do you feel like that background has helped you kind of traverse that career path?
Specifically geography wise, it's had a few minor influences. I think it's cool that like when I travel places, I can use a lot of that knowledge to generally just pinpoint where certain things in the town should be, because I did study a lot about city layouts. So just by, if I find a park in one place, I know there's probably certain amenities nearby, and I can generally just kind of get my way there. I don't really fear like traveling around an unknown city too much. Obviously, I'm not gonna be stupid about it, but I think it gave me a certain confidence to understand public transportation systems and just get myself there very easily. But I guess
I was thinking more from like a cultural perspective with with interacting with different players and from obviously drastically different cultures in some cases. I mean, do you feel like that has had an influence on your ability to traverse the Dota scene?
I don't know. I guess there certainly would have been some opportunities, especially I did go to one LAN in Dubai, which was that was a geographer's dream. My God, that was a place I never thought I'd ever want to go to. And now every time I like think about places someone wants to go, I recommend it, because it's such a difficult place to explain, but it's this massive amalgamation, obviously, of cultures, and like the people who have the money and obviously constructed this place don't work, so they literally hire people to do everything, from the person who is like cleaning the building to the person who designed and built it. No one who actually physically lives there works, so they're like this. They're like Sim City come to life or something, where they have actually and then they don't work in any of the buildings, right, either, because they don't have the need for it. They just have this infinite amount of wealth. So it's such a crazy case study as to what a culture can do when they have the means to make anything they want. I mean, I was there in the hotel, and it was the last day, and I'm sitting down having breakfast, and there's no one else in this place. And, like, there's literally 4 tables next to me. One has a mountain of strawberries, all fresh as you can possibly imagine. A mountain of pears, all freshly sliced. And, there's a guy who will make you, a tea. There's another guy who'll make you waffles, all fresh instantaneously. I'm the only person in the whole, hotel restaurant. This other guy walks in, and he comes and he sits down next to me, and he was a much older man than me. He would have been about probably like in almost his 40s or so. And he asked, like, could I come sit with you? And I could tell that he was European. Turned out he was from the Netherlands. And he started talking to me, and he was this engineer. And he'd been brought down from by a company to discuss the possibilities of constructing a dome over Dubai and how that would be feasible, or if we could build a man-made mountain to raise the air up so then it would condense and create rainfall to help improve the climate of Dubai. That's what he'd been brought down to look at doing. That just blew my mind.
That is nuts. Yeah, okay, I want to go to Dubai. You talked me into it. I never would have. I never would have said that. But
I always thought it would be this terrible place. I mean, it had all the things that I guess I didn't really care for, like walking around, like transportation systems. And there's 2 12-year-olds ahead of me, and literally they're wearing like the typical white Saudi Arabian like robes with like the headpiece, but everything they have is gold. I mean, they got gold watch, gold plated. Everyone had a gold plated iPhone, which I didn't even know was a thing. But they're all just swinging them around and everything, and the wealth is just, it's beyond imagine.
I mean, it's got to be an expensive place to stay, though, right? I mean,
yeah. Luckily, we didn't really have to handle that. That was one of the weirder. That was that WESG money. I don't know. I hope Alibaba keeps throwing tournaments. I will gladly keep coming.
Oh, that's great. So, all right. So when you mentioned as a young lad, you got into, some single player NES games and SNES games. Yeah. What were your first gaming experiences? What were the first games you got into and first platforms that you got into?
The very first one I remember would be Legend of Zelda, on the NES. I can remember my mother playing it. I don't know why they even got it for us. I was surprised because they weren't that into video games. Like, my mom played it a little bit and stuff, but the second we got our hands on it, my brother and I just absolutely never let go. It's just all video games all the time. I remember one time being very sad because, first off, I did beat Legend of Zelda, only dying 4 times, which I was pretty pleased with. Nice, I remember I was like 5 or something. I was very excited about that game, and I played it all the time. And then one time I was about to beat it with never having died, and my mom came in and turned off the TV because I hadn't done something I was supposed to do, and I died. And I was very upset. But I have many fond memories of those crappy NES games. Top Gun, I could never land the damn plane. I could do the mission. It was impossible. My dad could do it, and I would like beg him to come and please land the plane, and he'd do it like once a night, and then I was on my own. That was it.
Yeah, that game was brutal to play, especially as a kid.
Impossible. Actually impossible.
I remember that vividly, and it's a memory I have not thought about in years until you just brought it up. And those were
stupid screen.
Nightmare scenarios trying to land that thing in 2D. So you said you started getting into PC gaming when you went to university.
Yeah.
What were some of your first forays into PC gaming?
My very first one, I actually, now that I recall, did play a little bit at home because there was the summer of RuneScape. Somewhere around grade 10 or something like that. I remember spending an entire summer building cannonballs on dial-up RuneScape. So that was my only PC experience at home. And then once I went to university, I played Xbox for a little bit until I moved out of residence. And then once I had like my own place and like actually setting up a PC and everything, I got introduced to my brother's friends who he'd had for years, and they all just gamed online and stuff. So started doing a lot of stuff with them in terms of like Borderlands and all kinds of like those kind of co-op games. And they were the first ones who told me to come play Dota because I was obsessed with TF2, and they said I could get items during Frostivus which I could sell on the Steam market and then use that to buy TF2 stuff. And I was like, all right, let's go. Let's play this game. That's all I need to hear.
So your first interaction with Dota then was Dota 2.
Yes, that is correct. I never, I think my brother went to some lands when we were in high school. He occasionally went to a couple at his friend's place, and they would play Dota, but I only, like, very briefly, I can remember hearing about this game and being like, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. It's like an RTS, but you play with other people, and you only control one guy. That's what I remember thinking about it. But yeah, so I was just right into Dota 2 around Frostivus. I can't even remember what the patch was like back then. I think Elder Titan came out like somewhat soon after I started playing, if that sounds about right. But it was quite a while ago. Maybe it was Phoenix.
And for me, it was a 6x something patch is all I can recall. I know it was early, like 2014. I think that we started playing Dota. So let's see. You when you first came on the show as ModPax, I believe it was for Ask a Deviant. Was the segment we were doing? We had you guys on to give us some stat information, and I think we fed you guys some stats questions beforehand, and those were a lot of fun. I think it was Brian Petty who kind of arranged for us to start working with the Deviants. Yep. When did you get involved with the standard Deviants?
I think I was there from the beginning, I want to say. That sounds about right. It was like... The first thing that happened to me was I was watching one of the various Canada Cup seasons or American Dota League, one of those, and I was in the Twitch chat, and I was answering some questions, and, just, I forget what they were doing. They were doing random trivia or something, but I was just, kind of answering them all about certain players and stuff like that, because I'd really gotten into the pro scene over the past couple of years, and then that's how I met Brian. He just asked me a couple questions and wanted to know if I would be interested in adding random tidbits into the cast and, like, helping the casters prep for the games. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a good way to get into casting, because I'd kind of been, thinking about it and just like, oh man, I think it'd be so much fun to just talk about Dota all the time.
Yeah.
So I kind of used that as a foray just to get myself in, and it was enjoyable as well. I thought it was good that people were more prepared for the cast. I could see it helping casters during the draft and stuff like that, which was pretty cool. So that's when I think Brian shortly after that started up the whole standard Deviant business.
I mean, and that was was that your introduction to Dota stats in general, working with those guys?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I had already been just on my own accord looking at Dota and stuff like that, so that's kind of how I knew most things about the random player trivias and stuff like that. I think I'd just seen the site posted about on Reddit or something like that, I'm sure. So at that point, I just kind of took that experience and started throwing it into to games, and obviously those little stat pop-ups that used to appear.
Yeah, whatever happened to those?
They are back, actually. They work again now. They've had some issues with recent patches and stuff, and Knoxville had managed to like hack his way into still making them work with some various various workarounds essentially, but now they're all fully done. They've even got some new features, so you can definitely expect them to be in full force. I believe he is currently in full force at Dream League, in fact. Throwing them up. Yep.
Awesome. Do you consider yourself a stats geek? Were you a stats geek before Dota, or did stats geekiness develop as part of Dota?
Yeah, it definitely became an interest because I saw it as an area that people weren't exploring, and I wanted to know what I could predict using the data that was available. It was like there was all this insane amounts of data, and no one was talking about it, which is the only thing that kind of drove me crazy, because I could just like look at a team and like, or I could see a hero pairing and I'd be like, man, this hero pairing literally wins 90% of the time. And of course, the first thing you do once you see any crazy number is you start thinking, okay, why is this happening, right? And that was what really got me into it, because it's not so much about what these numbers mean. It doesn't mean that if you pick these two heroes, you're going to win the game, but you find that and then you build off of that and you use that to build your own Dota knowledge. So I say, okay, this is 90% win rate. Why? Is it because they're really good? Is it because the team who picks it, they're the only ones who pick it, are just a really good team? And that would often happen. But then there'd be this other little subset that you'd be like, man, this combo wins like all the time. And then suddenly it's meta like 2 months later or something like that. And you could actually kind of see these trends occurring and building up.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it is fun to. I don't know. We were doing a show for a while where we were going through and just selecting counter picks. Right. We'd go into a game and we'd whether our team liked it or not, grab the last 2 picks and we would just pick the heroes that countered it by stats alone. They're counted the enemy team comp by stats alone. And it was fun. It is fun to kind of delve into that and say, like, okay, why did the stats say this? Is there a reason for it? Is it because of skill level? Is it because of some weird counteraction that the abilities of this hero can take on? What is it that makes this matchup statistically better? Yeah, and I don't know. It's always fun to stats tell a story, but they don't necessarily tell the full story,
or the truth.
Or the truth. I think Nahaz would take issue with you saying the stats. The stats might lie. I believe he has a line about that.
He just may.
So from the standard deviants, you start working with Greg Laird and company over at High Ground TV.
Hell yeah!
How did that come about, and what were you doing for them and with them?
I believe Brian was a part of their editor board prior to talking to me, so he was already like a part of High Ground TV. And then it was a very small group. It was a very there weren't like very many big projects or anything like that. It certainly wasn't a sort of like a full-fledged studio that like BTS is or Join Dota was at the time, or like even that Moonduck is now. Like clearly it was a much smaller thing. We had like 2 tournaments. We had Canada Cup and we did land that 1 or 2 seasons of Dota Pit. I can't quite remember, but other than that, it was pretty low key. It was just some people like who wanted to write articles, or some other people that wanted to, do other various stuff, all just kind of working together in the Dota sphere to try and make each other, giving each other a little bit of a leg up, as it were.
Yeah. So from there, I guess this is where I get confused about where you went on your career trajectory, because I know your Liquipedia says that you were at they list you going to TI5 as the stats consultant for Complexity Gaming.
Yes.
Was that kind of the next big move, and if how did that happen?
Yeah, that was because of, I believe it was Brian, I'm pretty sure, who he just happened to be approached by the Complexity guy because Ms. Kyle Beef, what's his name? Bautista, that's his last name.
Yeah.
He's a lovely guy. He's the best. Love Kyle. Yeah. So he, had seen all the stats and stuff and just like the general postings. And at that point, we'd made quite a few public forays about standard deviants, and it kind of had a little bit of a thing going. And I think they had... we had just done like a lot of stats for the qualifiers, I want to say, for TI. Like there was that big hub in Europe that was, I forget, it was the first one at the PGL studios, I believe, with like James hosting and stuff like that. And I think Hoppid was there. And the entirety, like every game was covered by a stats person, which was pretty cool. And so I think it was partly because of that and just like seeing all that information and stuff that, Kyle kind of just said, like, look, is this stuff, like, is there anyone who you think could make this stuff useful to a team? And so basically Brian said, I think I know someone who would want to try. And so he put me in contact with Kyle, and then we started just kind of working right from there. Basically had like one meeting with Swindle. We talked about what he wanted to accomplish, what I thought I could accomplish. And then we just kind of went to work. I would basically get instructions from Kyle, talk about dates, talk about like tournaments they were going into and stuff like that. He'd like message me the groups the second it was drawn so I could start getting to work on the right teams. And I have to say, it was during one of Complexity's most successful phases, which was a pretty fun ride to be a part of. That was like when Fly was there and Moomiander was there for part of that too, right into TI. And they did very well. And it was pretty cool. It was weird to like actively hear about like Fly and Moonmeander liking the stuff that I had sent them, which was a pretty big deal for me at the time because
I'm sure
I had never had any sort of recognition from any, accredited sources or stuff like that. So, I sent them I would watch replays and just OBS part of it, just be like look what they're doing here. They pick this hero and they do the same thing every single time. Or ward maps were probably one of my bigger specialties, because there were certain teams that they often put the ward in the exact same spot every time. And I'm just listen, you don't even have to deward this thing if you don't want to. Expect then they didn't even give you the gold back to any sort of a relevant standard to what they do now. So you just be like, look, just play around this ward. It's there, and he's gonna think that he's safe because of this ward. So just either smoke under it or just walk around the thing, because it's there every game, and you can see them abuse that in certain matches.
Are teams using stats to that degree currently? And because that's something you definitely don't hear about very often. Is them having people dedicated to developing statistics, both maybe about themselves and about opponents.
Yeah, we did have FNM. I think is the most notable one currently, who has not FNM, now the Greeks, now something else. I can't remember what their new name is.
Former AdFNM.
Yeah, former AdFNM. Oh, Mouse. They're Mouse Sports. Oh, jeez. There's been a couple of those guys. I feel forgiven. But they have a great guy, Cook, Alan Cook, I believe his name is, who does quite a bit of stats work for them, especially at Boston and everything. And I think he's pretty proud of that. So that's one team that's very public about it. I think there are other teams that, I would imagine that Mad does do some stuff for OG that would be considered stats in a way, as much as anything I really did with stats. Perhaps he doesn't go as deep as some things. I was going to the point where I was looking at tower timings and stuff like that to try and figure out exactly, what are the patterns of prioritization and stuff in a team and everything like that. And which itself, admittedly, can probably be a little bit deep, especially if you're just a coach who's only using the numbers to help try and point you in the right direction. But when you're a full-time stats person, you are looking through every nook and cranny. So I could see teams, if they did want to invest more into that, they could probably find a little bit more information. But I think there definitely needs to be a very good balance. I would prioritize a Bulba or a Mad over a analyst position.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And you mentioned that was during one of Complexity's, maybe higher performing runs in the Dota sphere. I mean, I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of information that would be useful to pro teams. I guess I'm surprised that we don't. Are you surprised that we don't hear more about it or see more of it?
I think part of it was. We had the collapse of Dota, the guy who used to run it and did a lot of the work. Certainly deserves a lot of credit for it. Martin, he just didn't want to carry out the project anymore. He did a lot of work for it, all on his own money, servers, and everything like that, but he just couldn't really keep it going at that point. He just didn't have the time or anything. So that was a massive undertaking to turn it from a giant scrap of codes all slapped together, which what essentially was at that point, into something usable again. And that kind of fell on the shoulders of Knoxville. Maybe he took the burden on himself too, wanting to, because he wants to create this thing and make good use of Dota and keep that brand alive. But he was obviously very busy. I mean, the guy's a full-time job. He's trying to work tournaments, trying to stay relevant in Dota so that he can keep working these events once he finally finishes the thing. So we were basically out Dota for, I want to say, almost 2 full years, it feels like.
Wow. That's a massive undertaking for sure.
Yeah.
Has Valve been? I mean, and maybe you don't know from direct knowledge, but I mean, has Valve been helpful in helping? I guess how to phrase this? Keep Dota alive in a way ways that you would expect.
I guess there wasn't really too much for them to do, really. I mean, they've obviously been very supportive in terms of APIs and stuff like that. They've never taken away that information. I mean, there are some games that might not even release that kind of stuff all for free. So in that sense, they still provide everything you could ever need to create these kind of sites. They're pretty supportive whenever we talk to them in terms of in-game stats and stuff like that too. So they do care about it in that sense. Sometimes it takes a little while to get fixed. You might get the phase boots icon flipped around quicker than you will stats box fixed, but it does eventually happen. So there certainly is some input there. Bruno, of course, I think he knows Knoxville pretty well. So they try and keep that thing working. I think Bruno's all about the stats.
Yeah, for sure. So let's see. From there, what's going on between, I guess, this run at TI5 with complexity, and because I feel like there's a gap there where like we know you're doing that, and then we know you join up with Moonduck in like mid 2016. What were you doing from that first part of 2016 to your time with Moonduck?
Well, that was it was like the stars aligned. And I had done all my stats stuff. It had gotten me into a position where I was seen as someone respected in terms of like what I was bringing to the table. I had a very unique view of Dota at that point because of just the way I was reading the game and looking at it. And, on top of all the stats and stuff, I also watched every single replay. I would watch it in like 5 different players' perspectives. I would, use that kind of stuff to understand like shot calling and all that. So, That I think gave me enough of a unique thing that certain people started just asking, like, I kind of said, hey, do you want a co-caster? Or do you want to, so I think Toffees was the first person I ever co-cast with. It was some trash Sunday night event or something. I think it was NEL. And we did a couple games together. And then somehow I got to know Gareth, aka back then Durka. And he started inviting me to come do some Southeast Asian Dota because they needed some co-casters. So I started casting with him. And then I just did a ton of join Dota casting contracts for like a long time. It was like Southeast Asia and China, and I was casting with Gareth. And I remember the first time I cast with Toby, I was pretty nervous because it was like just kind of came out of nowhere, right? Like months before, I was just doing stats and stuff and kind of excited at the prospect of maybe getting to casting. And I started going with Durka, and then I started doing my own like freelance cast where I would just cast people's pubs and like ask for feedback and stuff from them. So I did that for a long time. I had like a little Steam group going where people would submit their things and whatnot, and that helped quite a bit. And then suddenly I was just casting with Toby and Cap and thoroughly enjoying myself.
And casting is, I mean, obviously, stats is more behind the scenes work. Casting being, right there in front of the camera, or I guess maybe not in Dota terms in front of the camera, but you're the
one
guiding us through that
for
match.
sure.
Yeah. So I mean, is that your preferred role? Is
Yes.
that where you'd like to continue being in the Dota community?
Yes, I would never want to go back to stats. Certainly not in a permanent sense like that.
Yeah.
I always wanted to just be, watching the game, sharing my excitement and enjoyment of the game, and just trying to point out, like, my goal when I cast is to just talk about and try and point out all the amazing intricacies of Dota and crazy little plays that players make that I never want to see missed. And it's hard to do that from a stats box. There'd be times I'm just watching this game and I would see some player make some insanely minute detail that wins him the lane, or, something just so crazy small, or he like manages to use 3 spells in combination to make some crazy triple stack and the camera's just not there. And I just want to like scream. I'm just like, oh my God, how'd you guys not just see this insane triple stack? Like, or like warding. Oh my God, I could talk about wards for an entire cast. Like there's some players that I just find so impressive. So I couldn't take it anymore. I had to start actually pointing it out.
So I mean, obviously, I've heard a few of your casts, and you are definitely capable of bringing the hype, and I think people listening to you, if they haven't heard your cast, just listening to you just talk about wards as passionately as you did, I'm sure that they understand. They understand where you're coming from. But you're at the same time you have that stats background. Do you see yourself more? I think most people see you more as an analytical caster.
Yeah.
Would you rather be the hype caster?
No, actually. I definitely prefer the color role. I like just being the guy who's just kind of just trying to point out all those little things, I don't even care if there's some guys diving a tower top. I don't care. I just want to watch this dude stack 4 camps in the jungle or something. Like, I'm usually on the other side of the map, not even watching. Like, I'll look for a second, like, yeah, that guy's gonna die. Like, to me, that's not even that interesting. It's like, okay, yeah, he went out of his step, he's gonna die, but that's like 8 seconds where we're not talking about this crazy tiny thing this guy's doing on bottom lane that's so cool. So it's I thoroughly enjoy the analyst role for sure.
I mean, and obviously having that stats background was a huge help in doing that. Do you find yourself trying to keep abreast of like current statistical trends? How much attention do you pay to stats now in the analytical role?
Definitely. Now that Dota's back, as it's only kind of recently come back, I've already started to use it again, just in a few ways. But hopefully, assumingly that I have a little bit better knowledge on the game now than I did 2 years ago, I definitely use them more as almost like I'll have a theory developed, because it used to be I would use the stats to then develop this theory that I would then bring to the team or even to like my early casting days, and I would try and use that as like I would state a fact and then I would back it up with that evidence that I had and things like that. But now it's more like I just want this collection of stats and numbers in my head so that when I'm watching a game, I can start to formulate this kind of a theory, and then I can say, that's probably why we're starting to see more of this, and this. And it's more like the action of the actual gameplay is what I'm then using the stats to try and delve deeper into that one action, rather than trying to create information that makes me sound smart, like when I first started. So I'm looking forward to getting back into more stats for sure, as that Dota revives itself. But I certainly don't feel that same crutch or need for them that I needed at the beginning of my Dotaing.
Yeah. So in mid 2016 or so, you join up with Moonduck. How did that come about, and are you enjoying it?
Yeah, that was a very exciting time. When High Ground dissolved at the creation of Moonduck. So when I was still working for Complexity, I believe I was still on High Ground, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was around the same time period. And then High Ground, basically, I think it was at that TI that the discussions happened where they created Moonduck. So everyone who was in that kind of initial batch, there was OD Pixel back then, and then it was still all the same people you see today. And they just kind of created it. And so one day there was just this post on Reddit that was like, "Hey, we're Moonduck," and Greg and Mott mostly was just like, surprise. And Greg was leaving for BTS at like the exact same time. Just happened a little bit later. So suddenly kind of High Ground imploded. And I flamed Mott and Pimp Muckle numerous times for not even telling me that they were about to implode, because we had like possible tournaments still coming and whatnot. But it was all in, good fun. I understood, I certainly wasn't anyone that I would be interested in bringing right into a studio at that point. But so that was a little bit like, oh, well, okay. So as much as it was like, you're okay with this happening and you understand your place, it was still a little bit like, well, shit, I just like lost like my studio. They're all like these slight amount of people that were backing me up literally just dissolved, and now TI5 just ended. So like I'll have a little bit of work with Complexity, but I have nothing else right now. Like I don't have some Canada Cup to fall back on. I don't have, Dota Pit. So that's why I started that whole casting random replays, and then that's what led to Join Dota. And then of course through all of those casts, that's where I started becoming, I think I cast the most games out of anyone else in that period, by quite a margin. I remember Knoxville parsing the data, and I was like, it wasn't even close. I was like 300 games ahead of people or something like that. Wow. I was literally just casting every single game you can imagine. I would cast like 8 hours a day. I was also working, selling Norton online. Oh my God, that was the worst experience of my life, but had to put food on the table, as it were. Oh, God, I hated that. But I would work from 7 p.m. until 1 a.m. Then I would sleep until about 5 or 6 a.m. I would cast from 6 a.m. to lunch. I would sleep for 2 hours, and then I would cast from like 2 p.m. until around 6 p.m. And then my wife would get home. I'd eat supper, and then I would go back to work.
Ugh.
And I did that for the better part of a year. I worked the job for a full year, and that entire time I was casting. So I guess it was about a full year of just the grind, the grindiest grind that ever grinded. It was awful.
I feel you there. I definitely feel you there. But hey, the grind's behind you now.
The grind is behind me. Yes, it is quite nice being out of the grind.
So, and you're working as a panelist and a caster for Moonduck. You've got the Manila Masters coming up the end of May.
Yes.
Are you going to be doing panel work, or are you going to be or casting, or both?
Good question. I don't know. I'm not sure. I believe in terms of like the initial announcement, I believe I was listed as just a caster, but looking at who's coming and everything like that, I hope I'll be doing some paneling too. I love paneling. I think it's because typically at LANs, the casters don't get to talk about the draft, and the draft is my favorite part. So I would like to at least do a little bit of paneling while I'm there, but I'd also be very excited to cast live in front of the crowd of Manila, because I've heard it's just unbelievable.
Do you've done a little panel work before as well, and obviously a ton, apparently a metric fuck ton of casting. Do you prefer doing the casting over the panel work? Like, because to me, if I look at everything, like, I think I'd rather be on the panel if I were to have my druthers and it got roped in. I would think I'd want to be on the panel as opposed to being in the casters, like hot seat, just because of the sheer pressure, if anything.
Yeah, that's definitely true. There's definitely way more as a caster. You really don't want to screw up, which it doesn't really matter on the panel. You screw up on the panel, someone calls you out, everyone laughs, and that's it. You screw up in a cast, and maybe the other caster doesn't notice, and you just get people to kind of tune out because all they think about is, oh, that guy just said something so stupid. Now I don't care about what he says for the next 5 minutes, and then some team fight happens and they forget again. But I think I enjoy having both of those options and doing both of them, because it's just like, yes, the panel is very enjoyable. It's generally what I do whenever we do Moonduck stuff. I like to be on the panel, it's fun. We're just chilling, doing our little webcam stuff for like elimination mode or whatnot. Or when we did the Northern Arena, I spent a lot of time on the panel there. I think I only cast like 1 game or 2 games or something like that, and I just paneled the whole time, which I had a ton of fun doing. It's just 2 very different experiences, The casting gives you that gameplay, and it lets me talk more about, like, it lets me find that little moment, which is much harder to do on the panel. Like, yeah, I can bring it back, but, if I want to point out this super crazy thing that Yapslor did in the last game, I have to talk to production, who have to get the video, who have to get it online, and I can't do that for, like, 10 different things. So, Both of them have their ups and downs, for sure.
So along the way, you mentioned you had the miserable grind, and I think a lot of people who are pursuing careers in esports, myself being one of them, can attest, like, those types of grinds, if you want to stay relevant, are really tough, and can be demoralizing even at times.
Definitely.
Have you ever felt like quitting? Has that thought ever crossed your mind, where you just thought, screw it, I'm done?
I can remember there was only ever one time where I really seriously, because, like, as you can imagine, I had TI and stuff was pretty solid work, and Complexity paid me well for what we just agreed upon. Basically, I was like, I think that the thing that would make the most sense for you guys if we just did an hourly rate, and then that way I will just make the stuff, you guys like it, we'll pay for the hours, and we'll go from there. So it was basically like working a full-time job for them, which was fantastic. I would just do as much work as I could. I'd send it to them. They were very happy with it, and we kept that going. So that makes it very easy when you're working with a relationship, like with my wife, because there's money coming in, everything's great. Even though she knew, like, she was very understanding and kind of knew that I was trying to pursue this passion that was certainly not always going to pay like that. And then once the grind started, I mean, I considered, like, maybe like 7, 8, 9 months into the Norton that I was like, okay, this can't happen. Like, I can't just keep doing this part-time job with the casting and try and make this work. I need to, like, quit esports, get a real career with my degree, and just start living in the real world. But the whole, like, joining Moonduck and then just starting to get more and more contracts and more games that paid enough, it was just like, hey, I can actually just quit Norton and this can be my job and I can make this work. I was already on that grind, and that was only half the grind at that point, obviously, because I was still working Norton, and then I just went full grind. I was like, I'm just going to replace Norton with Dota. This is fantastic. Now I'm doing what I love all the time, and I'm making money all the time. So it was very close. It was a real watershed couple of weeks that probably could have thrown me off the entire track, had those kind of things not started to line up right in a row. It's really painful. It's tough to look at the person you love who, like, I would try and do so much work in the actual house itself, because you're trying to, like, balance out the fact that, she has a great career. She's an engineer. She's fantastically smart, finished top of her school, all that kind of stuff. And then you're there trying to make this video game thing work. So you're like, you want to have like you want to do everything for them because they're working so hard to like try and let you do this thing. And when it's not working, at least not to the satisfaction that you want or the speed that you want, it's very straining. It's not even so much like she was upset. I was like upset at myself for what I wasn't able to do in comparison. So she was like, I would definitely not be here if it wasn't for her just like general like support through essentially not ragging on it, you know?
Yeah. Does she watch you cast, or is she into Dota, or have any idea what you're even doing?
She I believe she knows Windrunner, Chronosphere, and that sounds about like it, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, she just not a gamer, doesn't really get it. I believe I gave her my GameCube shortly after we started dating and set her down with Wind Waker, and she did play through that and very much enjoy it. So she can get there, but she has like no idea how Dota works in any sense of the word. She's not really into it. That's fine by me. Doesn't bother me or anything like that. Yeah, she just kind of she sees it. She knows that I like it, so she lets it go.
How about your parents back home in Nova Scotia? What do they think about you pursuing a career in esports?
They don't care. Sometimes I get a text from my mom saying, "We're watching you on the Moon Duck." It's pretty. And I was just like, okay, cool.
I mean, were they understanding whenever you, because you obviously had moved away from home by the time you were really getting into Dota and probably, you know, even starting down the path that would lead to all of this. Did they? I
basically didn't have any real communication with them in terms of like, we never really talked about money or jobs or anything like that, just because when I was going through school, I was on student loans for the most part. I was also working with as a carpenter, actually for my then girlfriend's dad, who's obviously now my wife and stuff. So I was helping them build a property. So like to them, I was just always doing other jobs. They didn't even really know about the Dota. It wasn't until just before we'd gotten married, just before I talked to you that first time, that they even understood that I was trying to do something in this kind of like gaming PC thing, which they still don't understand anything about Dota. But for my birthday that year and like Christmas and stuff like that, my brother kind of talked to them, and together they actually ended up buying me a PC that was capable of streaming better. So that was pretty huge. It's pretty crazy. Yeah. That was like the one of the only things I ever actually like got from my parents that I can like remember. But it was it was at the right time, so
yeah,
that certainly helped out. But like I definitely don't have like a super close relationship. Like I think my wife, her mom's like her best friend. Like we see her just like all the time. But my parents were more not like standoffish or anything. We just didn't kind of have that same like talk every day sort of thing. So once they saw that I was going places with esports, like literally traveling, they were like very interested in like what are you doing? Like what is this? So try and explain it to them.
Yeah. So all right. So before we wrap up here, I got a couple questions. One, a little more specific to Dota. Does making all this content, does it interfere with your ability to play Dota?
Yes.
Of course.
I feel like I never get to play. That's definitely true. It's tough, you know. You're doing all these casts and stuff, and the worst is like turn on Dota, and immediately I get like 6 messages saying, "Yo, come play." I'm like, I can't. I got to cast in like 37 minutes, so I don't have time to play Dota. But then you have 37 minutes where you're just sitting there like, ugh, I wish I was just playing Dota right now. Like I just want to. So yeah, you have to find these other small games, which I guess maybe I'm a little unique in this, but I find a lot of like the people I work with, like for example, Zyori, he literally hasn't played another game besides Dota like in years. Like he'll play a little bit of Overwatch. It came out, he played a little bit, and now he's playing a little bit of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. But that guy just cares about Dota. He loves it. But he can't really get into those other games. But I really started like because of the whole. Casting Dota just puts this weird time crunch on you where you have to be available and you can't miss the start of the game, you know? So between like researching for the games and watching those teams' replays, which obviously from the whole stats things, I very much enjoy just watching random replays. I still do it. Like just this morning, I watched like 5 different replays, most notably about how Clutch Gamers totally owned Mushi's TA today, and like everyone else is getting dumpstered by TA, and then I see Mushi get owned 2 games in a row. I'm like, okay, what are Clutch Gamers doing that they are crushing this TA so hard right now? So had to go back through those replays and stuff, and then those are just the ones you're not even casting. You're
Right.
just trying to keep up with the general pro scene. So you got to find those little games that don't have those timers. Your little roguelikes and stuff
Yeah.
like that. That's my jam.
Are
I
you
play
a
a lot
faster
of
than
those.
light player?
Oh, I do like that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, my big jam is Enter the Gungeon. I played that a ton over the past several months. Had a lot of fun. I haven't played in a couple weeks now, but man, I will recommend that game to anyone. I have 140 hours, and I didn't even have it that long. That game is so good. And they
definitely
just
check
dropped
that
a
out.
big free update, so shout out to you, Enter the Gungeon. But yeah, it's really tough. I love playing my pubs with Sunsfan though. He's always down to throw me an unranked 5 stack, and we just play some trash heroes, and it's great.
I think it's funny sometimes because I ask everybody that question knowing that the answer obviously is going to be yes. If you're making content, like that's your free time that you're going to have to devote to it, and even if it's your job, obviously it's going to eat into your free time in some capacity. In your case, it's watching those replays when you could play a game of Dota. But you got to stay on top of it.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because I wonder, and maybe you wonder this as well. Like I think people hear about esports careers or contemplate an esports career, but maybe don't. And I think the thought is, oh, that'd be great. I'd get to play Dota all the time. And I maybe sometimes there's just not that consideration that, oh, I might just be watching Dota all the time.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true, but I absolutely love watching competitive Dota. Like, I love it. I can just do it all day. To me, it's like almost more fun than playing, It's just, again, I just love trying to highlight and show those things that players do, because I think they're totally on another level. And although they get credit for that, a lot of the time they also don't, There's a lot of people just see, Lulba or something, and it's so much easier to just throw up those bad clips of players and certain players just never getting credit and stuff like that. So it's when you really go into a game and watch from a player's perspective, and you just understand how little information they're working with when they make these plays that you're seeing on the stream from the full vision of both teams. That's one thing that's just like so difficult to grasp about the spectating of Dota. You see this guy die, and you're like, "Oh my god, how did he just feed there?" But it's not really clear how much he could see, because of the way spectating works and stuff like that. So,
Right.
it's something else, man.
So, all right, before I let you go, final question. I always like to ask anybody this, or especially guests that are working in esports. I know that there's somebody out there right now listening to this that is hoping to pursue a casting career, would like to someday see themselves sitting on a panel, maybe not even for Dota. Maybe for another esport that they're in love with, but I'm assuming it's probably Dota. What would be the best single piece of advice that you could give somebody who is looking to pursue a career along those lines?
The one that always comes to mind, and probably the one that helped me the most I don't even know if someone in particular told this to me, but just the idea of just like, it's so cliche, but the reason you want to do this is because you must have some sort of a passion for the game, and find out what your passion is in Dota. Like, what is it about Dota that draws you to it, and then give that to other people. Try and express what that is. If it's Overwatch, why it's Overwatch. If it's Hearthstone, why it's Hearthstone. Don't try and mimic and copy these other casters or analysts. Don't try and do or be who they are, because you're probably not ever going to be Merlini. But if there's something that, if you have this burning passion and you think it's something that you can share with people and they're going to be interested to hear about it, then, be you. Like, I think Jack is probably one of the best examples of that. This guy, like, yes, he's a huge leg up because of his translating skills and stuff, and that's kind of how he worked in there. But this whole idea of him bringing together the culture, because he's so fascinated by that. He always talks about how hilarious it is playing pubs in China or Europe or NA, and he's now made a career where this guy can go to any LAN. Everyone wants Jack. All because of that. He's not a 7K player. He's an exceptional Dota player. He's very good, but he's not a former pro. He's Jack. And, find your Jack people. That's what you got to do. If you can do that, you will be fine.
Damn it. Now I miss Jack.
I know, right? He was around, I think, when I did that interview.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think he was a little afterwards, but it's been a while since we.
Yeah, he was doing Dota radio with me around that time, I believe. Actually,
Yeah,
which is pretty good.
Yeah, the Dot Pro show. The Dot Pro show misses you, Jack, but we're happy to have Breaky doing it now. So
yes, yeah, shout out to Breaky.
Yeah, I think that awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show today, Trent. It's been a blast to talk with you again, to catch up with you again, and just to see where you wound up all these years later. That you're still not just that you're still around, but that you're thriving. It's great to see, and
thank you.
Really appreciate you coming by. If folks want to find you, they can follow you on Twitter at TrentPax, TrentPax. They can also find you on Twitch, where you're streaming, twitch.tv/TrentPax. How often do you get to stream out there?
Not very. Pretty. I go to stream or I go to play Dota and I watch a replay. So you'll still catch me all the time on Moonduck, of course, though. Where
That's right.
We do our various events. Every Tuesday we have game night, which is what we were doing tonight. So currently, I think they're still actually queuing up right now as we speak, doing some battle pass quests with the Purge, Annie, and the crew. So it's great.
I will let you get back to that. Of course, everybody remember you can find TrentPax and hey, the aforementioned KBBQ, Jack Chen. He's going to be there too. I'm looking at the talent list. Sir Action Slack, speaking of Moonduck folks, OD, Pixel. Yeah, so there are going to be, an old Knoxville's going to be there too. Wow.
Oh, it's
they
a
got
party.
a whole crew coming out for the Manila Masters.
I mean, once Pimp Uncle gets invited, you know it's going to be good.
Yeah, exactly. And that's going to be a crazy tournament. EG, OG, Newbie, Secret, NP, Invictus, Faceless, and Clutch all lined up to participate there. So that's definitely going to be a tournament to watch, and you guys can check TrentPax out there. Maybe casting, maybe paneling, maybe both.
Who knows?
It'll be a surprise. All right, that's going to do it for us. Until next time, this is Cyphus for TrentPax saying good luck and Godspeed.